There's no oops big enough for this one. After 2 weeks of dragging 43 content creators, mostly women, through expensive legal panic, Blake Lively's legal team did what every coward does when cornered. They ran. They folded. They withdrew the subpoenas without apology, without explanation, and without accountability. And now, those same creators are calling for something Lively didn't anticipate in her little game of legal chicken, retribution. And they're absolutely right. Because if Blake Lively was hoping to subpoena her way out of public scrutiny, she just subpoenaed herself into a PR inferno. Not only has her legal stunt backfired, but creators and lawyers alike are now openly discussing suing her for court costs and damages. Because yes, malicious litigation is grounds for financial punishment, and if Blake thought she could weaponize the courts without consequence, she's about to get a crash course in real justice. Let's rewind. Briefly. Just days ago, Lively's legal team started quietly withdrawing subpoenas from every creator who dared fight back. Janessa, Laura Knighty, Ashley Brianna Eve, Cassidy O'Connell, Leanne Newton, and more. All received abrupt notices that Blake's camp was backing down, not because of mercy, but because their motions to quash were airtight, because Blake had no case, because what she tried to do was never legal to begin with. Let that sink in. These weren't criminal defendants. These were women with YouTube channels, TikTok accounts, podcasts. All they did was talk about a lawsuit that was already public. They quoted court documents, referenced verified articles. They gave opinions, the kind of opinions Blake's own legal team once claimed to stand up for. So, what changed? Blake Lively's team thought they could get away with it. They thought they could dig through people's bank records, emails, IP logs, and physical addresses, all under the thin excuse that maybe, possibly, they were working with Justin Baldoni. Spoiler, they weren't. Not one of them. Not even close. The only creator who'd ever spoken to Baldoni's team was Andy Signor, and even then, it was a standard journalistic request for comment. Every other subpoena? Fabricated justification. Smoke. Mirrors. Intimidation dressed up in legalese. And here's where it gets uglier. The subpoena withdrawals weren't some magnanimous gesture. They were a desperate retreat. A weekend filing. Yes, Blake's lawyers were scrambling on a Saturday to undo the damage. Because motions to quash were stacking up. The judge was going to see them. The press had started catching on, and the creators weren't backing down. At this point, we need to stop asking, why did Blake subpoena creators? And start asking, how is she not being sued right now? The financial damage is real. Legal fees for responding to federal subpoenas aren't cheap. Lawyers don't work for exposure. And none of these women were compensated for the time, energy, and emotional labor it took to fight a bogus legal attack. So yes, the calls to sue Blake Lively for malicious prosecution and damages are not just justified, they're overdue. Because what Blake did is what bullies do when they think their last PR card is power. She tried to silence dissent with subpoenas, not cease and desists, not statements, subpoenas. She went for bank info, IP logs, backup emails, private home addresses. If that's not malicious, what is? And yet, her team thought no one would notice. They assumed Google wouldn't notify the creators in time. They assumed TikTok and X wouldn't alert their users. They assumed these were just small voices in a big media sea who wouldn't have the money or fight to push back. They were wrong. Turns out, creators are not just smart, they're organized. They lawyered up. They coordinated. They shared legal templates. They filed 60-plus page rebuttals. And when the documents hit Blake's legal desk, her team folded faster than a knocked-over house of cards. This wasn't a change of heart, it was a tactical retreat. But it's too late for that. Public opinion is already shifting. Even Blake's supporters are starting to ask questions. Why target mostly women? Why withdraw with no explanation? Why pretend nothing happened? And, more importantly, why should Blake Lively walk away without consequence? The answer is simple. She shouldn't. There is no version of this story where Blake looks good. The subpoenas were never rooted in fact. They were rooted in fear. Fear that creators were shifting the narrative. Fear that Baldoni's side might finally be getting the public support it lacked early on. Fear that people were starting to see Blake not as a victim, but as the aggressor. And once the subpoena stunt failed, her team resorted to gaslighting the court. They asked the judge to ignore the motions, called them moot, claimed they didn't matter anymore. That's like setting someone's house on fire and then shrugging when they sue you. Oh well, it's out now. But the motions do matter. The harassment does matter. The financial costs matter. And creators have every right to sue for reimbursement. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an abuse of the legal system, and if there's any justice left in the world, Blake Lively should have to pay for it. This isn't just about Blake's crumbling reputation, it's about precedent. If a millionaire actress married to one of the most powerful men in the industry can subpoena women for having opinions, what happens next? What happens when the next celebrity doesn't just want to control their image but your voice? Even the New York Times got caught in this mess, reporting false insinuations that some creators were working with Baldoni's team, something now proven untrue. That misinformation, fed directly by Blake's camp, damaged reputations and added fuel to her campaign of intimidation. And remember, this entire smear strategy started with Blake's own PR machine, leaking stories to TMZ about Baldoni fat-shaming, lingering kisses, and other vague accusations. When those stories failed to get traction, she pivoted to legal aggression. Except it backfired. Horribly. The unsealed document from TAG proved that none of the subpoenaed creators had ever been in contact with Baldoni's team. Not one. The list was empty. Except Andy Signore of Popcorn Planet. And even he only reached out for a statement. So what was the basis of the subpoenas? A feeling? A hunch? Paranoia? That's not how subpoenas work, or at least it shouldn't be. Now, Blake Lively's team is trying to memory hole the entire thing. We never meant harm, they'll say. It's all been resolved, they'll whisper. But the creators haven't forgotten. The legal fees haven't vanished, the damage hasn't undone itself, and the smear Blake thought she'd orchestrated against Baldoni, it's now ricocheted back on her and worse. Her lawyer, Ezra Hudson, is also catching heat. A woman who publicly championed free speech is now infamous for using legal force to silence it. Her name appears on the subpoenas. Her name is on the emails. Her now deleted LinkedIn post praising herself for protecting voices has become a monument to hypocrisy. So, where do we go from here? First, those creators need to unite. They need to sue for damages, for court fees, for emotional distress. Because unless someone makes an example out of Blake Lively, this kind of power play will happen again. Second, the public needs to stop pretending that Blake is some delicate victim of internet cruelty. She's not. She's the aggressor here, the bully, the one who threw the first legal punch and cried foul when people pushed back. Third, Hollywood needs to decide what kind of behavior it tolerates from its golden girls. Because if studios and brands keep enabling this kind of behavior, audiences will find someone else to root for. And Blake's not the only one who should be nervous about that. The truth is, this entire mess could have been avoided. All Blake had to do was let the press run its course, let the public debate happen. Let the court battle with Justin Baldoni play out in the legal arena, not online. But instead, she chose war. And when she lost, she scurried away with a weekend filing and a hope that no one would notice. Hey Blake, we noticed. So no, Blake doesn't get to walk away from this. She doesn't get to play the victim. She doesn't get to shrug off the subpoenas like it was all just a silly misunderstanding. She sued. She targeted creators. She lost. And now, she should pay. And if her team tries to pull the same line they gave the BBC when Justin subpoenaed Taylor's legal team. We will continue to stand up for any third party who is unjustly harassed. We'd like to remind them that line now applies to you. Because this wasn't just unjust, it was a warning shot to every content creator online, and the only thing that will make it stop is making Blake Lively regret ever trying it in the first place.